Hello, we're the Bowers.
I'm Alan.
I'm Diane. And we are going to be your guides to the 100-year journey, the story of the peoples and events of Eastern Europe through philately. And before we start on our journey, I'd like to call your attention to the stamp image on the left, which is a very touching rendering of a gentleman and two young children reviewing their stamp collection. It's at a wonderful place. It's the National Stamp Museum in Hungary, located in Budapest. And they have an immense Hungarian collection, as you would expect, but they also have an interesting worldwide collection with some of the very early stamps of Hawaii before it was a state, I believe.
Yep.
So buckle up and let's get started. Countries may come and go in their existence, and their borders may ebb and flow. But to the philatelist, the stamps and cultures of this region will endure over time. We hope to share with you today the story of the vibrancy and resiliency of the people and the cultures of this area.
History and leaders, culture, architecture, and more recently, social awareness are topics that we'll be using to help illustrate this journey. Some of the examples on the bottom of the screen, there's a very powerful stamp from Croatia that is "Say No to Hate," which is in the fight against racism. To the right of that, we have a rather interesting stamp that we'll see again later. It's a stamp that pictures the chain bridge of Budapest as seen from a funicular railway. To the right of that, we have St. Stephen's Crown, which is a topic that's prevalent throughout Hungarian philately. And all the way over on the right, we have children's stories, a Serbian set, and we'll revisit that topic a little bit later in the presentation.
So now that we know where we're going, just where is Eastern Europe? When countries change their names or shift their borders or reorganize, it's hard to figure out who's where and when. So a little hint for our discussions going forward is the seas are relatively stable, minus some climate change issues where they might rise or lower. If you keep the seas in mind, in the north, we have the Baltic. In the southwest, we have the Adriatic. In the south, we have the Aegean. And on the eastern side, we have the Black Sea. One other little tidbit to note, you will always be able to find Albania. It's always going to be in the same location with the same size borders. So keep your eye on that one because it's a little bit like playing Where's Waldo with everybody else.
Throughout the 100 years, Albania is the only country that stays the same. The rest of the map will change radically.
So here we go. Just prior to World War II, we were looking at three great monarchies ruling inside of Eastern Europe. We've got Austria-Hungary, we've got Russia, and it's a little hard on this map, but hanging off to the lower right side is the Ottoman Empire. These all were ruled by some very omnipotent rulers. In Austria-Hungary, you had Maria Theresa and Franz Joseph. In Russia, you had Peter the Great and Catherine the Great. And at the end, sadly, the last Tsar Nicholas. And the Ottoman Empire, one of the greats was Suleiman. Now, we've taken a little bit of license with the time frame of when these rulers actually ruled. Well, some of them preceded this time frame, others came later, but their impact is significant both then and now. Maria Theresa was one, oops, just bear with me here. Sorry about that.
Fast mouse.
Yes, fast mouse here. Maria Theresa was the only female ruler in the House of Habsburgs. She was the queen of the Hungarians, the Czechs, the Croatians, and the Archduchess of Austria. She reigned for 40 years. She was the wife of Francis, the Holy Roman Empire, and a great stateswoman, also a reformer. She abolished torture, which is always important. And coming from New England, she also stopped witch hunting, which is always, always important. And she improved the lots of some of the peasants. Maybe her most important legacy was her lineage, which impacted many of the rulers of Europe. Of her 11 daughters and 5 sons, 3 became famous rulers, including Marie Antoinette, Queen of France, Kings Joseph II, and Leopold II, Emperor of Hungary and Austria.
So
The other, oh, that's okay. The other long ruler of Austria, King of Hungary, was Franz Joseph, also the leader and monarch of Croatia and Bohemia. He was part of the dual monarchy created from the Austro-Hungarian Compromise, which created 2 leaders, 1 country, 2 capitals.
So let's take a look at the stamps here. The souvenir sheet on the left is of Maria Theresa, and it was issued in 2017, 300th anniversary of her birth. What this is a joint issue with all of the countries issuing that souvenir sheet that she had ruled over. And you can see the country names on the left. It's Hungary, Austria, Croatia, Slovenia, and the Ukraine. Each country issued that same stamp, but in their own language. Now, if you look to the right, that's a rather nondescript set of stamps, and that's probably putting it kindly. But that's the first set of stamps issued by Hungary. It's numbers 1 through 6, issued in 1871, and that is also the most valuable single set in Hungary. So it's a very nice one to have, even though it doesn't jump off the page at you.
Both the crown of Saint Stephen and the parliament are symbols of the Hungarian monarchy even today. The crown of Saint Stephen at the end of World War II was found by the US Army in Austria. It was later transported at the request of the Hungarian Crown Guard to the United States and kept in safekeeping at Fort Knox to prevent it being lost to the Soviets. It was finally returned in 1977 in person by President Jimmy Carter. The parliament is also a symbol, and you'll see a lot more of it later in the presentation. But Alan wants to
cover of the booklet there.
Share some information about these 2 amazing pieces here.
Yep, we saw the crown of St. Stephen in the first slide. This one here was issued in 2001, which was the 1000th anniversary of the first crowning of the King of Hungary. This crown was actually used for all of the kings from 1001, excuse me, till the last king in 1916. And it's prevalent throughout all of Hungarian philately and stamps, and also in watermarks. There's a lot of watermarks that have the crown on it. On the left, you see a booklet, which is has the parliament on it, and also has a souvenir sheet inside the booklet. The interesting thing about the souvenir sheet inside the booklet is that it has quartz crystals on it. Now, we really can't show that well here, but it's a fascinating souvenir sheet because you hold it up to the light and it glistens. So very, very interesting and application of technology there. So.
In Russia, 2 of the greatest to ever rule was Catherine the Great and Peter the Great. Catherine was the longest female ruler of Russia. Although she started her life as a German princess, she came to Russia to be the bride of the rightful ruler, Peter III. She married Peter III. He turned out to be a completely incompetent monarch, worked to overthrow him, did a coup. After the coup, banished her son and became the ruler of Russia. She went on to become what was considered an enlightened despot and led the generals and the military to expand the borders of Russia. She created victory over the Ottoman Empire through the Russo-Turkish Wars and gained outlets to the sea on both the Black Sea and the Azov Sea. She petitioned the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, taking the larger share for Russia. It just so happened that King Stanislav, who was running that empire at the time, was her lover, and she took over the empire anyhow. So you could agree that she was a formidable enemy or foe, a formidable adversary, a friend and foe alike. Through the expansion was required conscription of both the serfs and the military use of the Cossacks. The Cossacks were military warriors that were allowed independent rule within Russia, except for when they felt their freedoms were infringed upon, and then they incited rebellions, the most famous of which was the Pugachev Rebellion. Peter the Great, the other great ruler, who preceded Catherine, modernized Russia with the idea to create a modern economy and a navy. As part of the modernization, he adopted Western dress and had the nobles shave their beards. The first naval base was established in Russia 8 decades before the United States had a navy. By the end of Peter's rule, he accomplished great economic reform for Russia, exporting more goods than importing them. And Alan's going to tell you a little bit about these interesting looking.
Yeah, the 2 stamps on the top are the first commemorative set in Russia, issued in 1913. That was on the 300th anniversary of the Romanov dynasty. And those stamps picture Peter and Catherine. Catherine is the one on the right. The Cossacks, which Diane was talking about, are pictured in the Ukraine souvenir sheet on the bottom, and it's 4 of the Cossack leaders that you see there.
And as we move sadly to the end of the Romanov dynasty, Tsar Nicholas and the Romanov family, World War I was disastrous for Russia and led to the demise of the Romanov family. With poor advice, a binding alliance, and an involvement in unpopular war. Towards the end, the peasants and the soldiers revolted, picking up their arms and going home and turning against the landowners. The Bolsheviks, who had taken control by that time, exiled Tsar Nicholas and his family to Ekaterinburg. And as the White Army started to march towards Ekaterinburg, the Bolsheviks sadly executed the Romanovs for fear of them being released. This sheet, Alan is going to explain to you. Oh, yep. It's not a sheet, sorry.
No, it's a stamp. It's called a sea tenant. For those of you who aren't familiar with that type of a stamp, but it's a stamp on the left of Tsar Nicholas, and on the right is the iconic family portrait. There's Alexandra, Nicholas, Alexandra, and Anastasia there. The stamp itself was issued in 1998 on the 80th anniversary of their death.
So this isn't 2 stamps.
It's 1 stamp called the sea tenant.
And the Ottoman Empire. The greatest of all rulers of the Ottoman Empire is considered Suleiman the Magnificent.
Here we have a couple of different aspects of philately that we haven't really gotten into before in the presentation, but on the left you have postal history. This is a first day cover. And to the right of that is a maxi card. Now these are tape-based stamps where you have the one stamp right side up and the other one inverted. But the significance of the stamp itself is a picture of János Hunyadi, and that's a statue that's in Budapest. It's a famous statue, and the reason János is famous is that in 1456 he defeated the Turks. The Turks were moving west, and that stopped the advance of the Turks. So then they went back. They were defeated. They came back again later. And the souvenir sheet on the right, the one on the right is commemorating the siege at Sigetvar. Now, this is another joint issue, and the joint issue is with Turkey, Hungary, and Croatia. And it's an interesting story because Turkey actually won the Battle of Sigetvar, but the Hungarians killed Suleiman there. So that again stopped the advance of the Turks going west, and they had to go back again. The reason that Croatia is the third country in the joint issue is because Sigetvar is now in Croatia. Used to be in Hungary, but now it's in Croatia. And it's an interesting looking sheet there.
All right, we'll move off of this one.
Yeah, let's go.
Buildings are wonderful expressions of the cultural and ethnic pride of this geography and the peoples, and is well depicted on the stamps of this area. And I'm just going to share some of these.
Yeah, the next 4 slides are architecture, and we won't go over each of the stamps. This one here is castles. On the lower left is a beautiful souvenir sheet of 8 castles in Hungary. And if you go up to the Russian stamp, that's St. Michael's in St. Petersburg, another beautiful castle. And Diane's favorite stamp
look who's there.
is Prince Vlad or Count Vlad, either one. But anyway, that's Dracula. And we took a little poetic license here because it doesn't really show a castle, but you know, how can you not put Dracula in a stamp with castles? So the next slide is parliaments, and parliaments are really a very popular topic throughout Eastern Europe. If you look at the stamp, the sheet on the left, that's a Romanian sheet that has views of parliaments inside the Romanian parliament, inside and outside views. To the right of that is the iconic, another first day cover, and it's the iconic Hungarian parliament building. And again, we see to the left of that, the stamp has, now the stamp has the crown of St. Stephen on it. Okay. And if you go to the right, again, now we're on the right. We have a series of parliament stamps from Hungary. This was a 5-year series, and each year there were eight different views of parliament with a label in the middle. And now we go to buildings, and we'll take a look at a couple of these. On the left, you have synagogues, far left. That's Hungarian synagogues, and there was a 10-year series in the early 2000s where each year there's pictures of 2 different synagogues in Hungary. They're beautiful stamps. Just to the right of that, we have Georgia souvenir sheet, and that is the church at the top is at Tbilisi, and that's a World Heritage Site. The bridges. And here we have an intersection of history and architecture. If you look at the Polish bridge, yes, that's the bridge of Tsu, T-C, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right, but it's T-C-Z-E-W. And that is where World War II actually started. There's there's the battle at Westerplatte is generally known to be the start of World War II, but that occurred at 4:49 a.m. on September 1st, 1939. The Germans bombed this bridge to cut off supply lines 15 minutes earlier. So that is actually the site where World War II started. Did I say 2?
Yeah. 2.
Okay,
yeah.
This time I said 2. Good. If you look at the the bridge diving.
Do not try this at home, please.
Bridge diving is a very popular topic in Eastern Europe. I'm not sure you see that anywhere else in the world, but if you look at the Kosovo stamp, that's a bridge diver. And if you look at the stamp to the right of that, that's a Bosnian stamp, and that's again bridge diver, and that fella is Emir Balik. And I don't think you'll see anywhere else in the world where a bridge diver occurs on a stamp. But if I'm wrong, so be it. Yeah, the chain bridge, the two on the right, there's another cover, which shows the 5 stamps in the chain bridge set, and also a beautiful drawing of the chain bridge as the cachet. Just below that is another set. There's actually a series of a couple of different souvenir sheets of the chain bridge, and that's the one on the lower right.
What we wanted to do was share a few symbols of culture from our family album. And I'll start here on the right with the chain bridge. Speaking of the chain bridge in Hungary, this photo was taken by your guides here today in 2017, 1,001 steps up Museum Hill on the Buda side, looking out towards the chain bridge across the Danube River. Just to the left of that is the funicular climbing Museum Hill, looking at the chain bridge over the Danube River from the same angle. They did not do the original perspective because my photo was taken in 2017, and this is a new issue from 2020.
Maybe they used your photo.
Maybe they used my photo. Alan will come back and tell you a little bit more about the magical turtle. To the left of that is the Fisherman's Bastion and the statue with the celebration of the coronation of Saint Stephen. And to the lower left corner, we have Hero Square with the mystical kings, and of course the actual photo of the Parliament in Budapest. And now, I forgot to mention, here we are, your guide standing on a bridge over the Tisza River in southwest Hungary, Szeged. Some of you that like cooking might enjoy Szeged paprika, which is one of their specialties. It's Szeged Day, which was a street festival, and Serbia was about 10 kilometers away. Alan's going to tell you a little bit about the cover here, I think.
Yeah, the cover is, the souvenir sheet that's on the cover. Oops.
Wait a minute. Sorry.
Where are we?
We're here.
One more. There we go.
Sorry about that. Everybody with us?
Souvenir sheet that's on the cover is beautiful when you look at it, if you can see it in larger format, but it's 2 panoramas. The top one is taken from the Pest side of Budapest and looking at the hills of Buda. The bottom one is a view of Pest taken from Buda. So those are 2 different panoramas of Budapest on the Danube River.
And someone sent that kindly to your dad.
Oh, that was my father's. Yeah. That's right. Yes. Now, to the turtle. The turtle is a mythical bird, and the myth is that in the year 896, the turtle was supposed to find the location of the capital of Hungary. So he was flying around, and he dropped his sword. The bird dropped the sword on that hill over there, and that hill is in Pest. The monument itself is actually on the top of the hill, and the story is that as soon as he dropped that became the capital forever of Hungary.
Isn't that in Buda?
That's in Buda.
Oh, okay.
Did I say Pest?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's in Buda.
Okay, the other half.
Yeah.
As we move forward, the face of Eastern Europe starts to change even more so between World War I and World War II. We see the collapse of the 3 empires, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, which also is known now as Turkey, and Russia has moved on to be the Soviet Union. Some of the defenders and heroes that participated in all of these events, just to mention Lady Death, or Ludmilla, the most famous female sniper of all times, a Russian soldier. She was the only female soldier to ever be invited to the White House. She came here at the invitation of Eleanor Roosevelt. And they actually toured the country, the US, together to solicit interest in the World War.
Now back to we'll go over to the right. The third event that occurred on September 1st, 1939 was the battle at the post office in Gdansk. The Germans overran the post office, but the valiant postal workers defended that. This stamp was issued in 1958 to commemorate that battle. The two stamps in the middle are stamps from the Polish government in exile. That government in exile was in England, and they created stamps, issued stamps that were used by the Polish merchant ships while they were fighting battles.
Eastern Europe's map changed even more after World War II. The USSR, if you remember earlier, you had seen the Baltic states of Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. Those disappeared. The Ukraine, Georgia are now absorbed. Poland was enlarged. Czechoslovakia was created. And secular rulers came to be. The Bolsheviks had promised the Russian people with peace, bread, and land. Instead, food was scarce, land was disappearing, and peace was fragile. The Russian Civil War lasted till 1921 when Lenin won. The next year, the Ukraine was re-annexed into Russia, and the Soviet Socialist Republic was the largest landmass in Eastern Europe. Went on to have Stalin and then Gorbachev. Gorbachev, led the Soviet Union in 1985, favored the term glasnost, which meant open discussions with the objective to break from the Soviet policies to help the economy. The Soviet Union lasted till 1991 when it came apart and the Russian republics started to exist. And we'll share with you some of the interesting details about these stamps here.
These leaders were depicted on many stamps of Eastern Europe. We have a few of them shown here. The one on the left is Russian. The Stalin souvenir sheet to the right of that is Hungarian. And we see another cover, a very interesting cover, which is Lenin on a Hungarian cover. To the far right, we have a 1987 stamp, and that 87 stamp was the Reagan-Gorbachev summit, where the nuclear arms reduction treaty was signed. And it's a rather interesting depiction of world leaders coming together.
The Eastern European Slavic countries were held out of the Soviet Union by one person and one person only, and that was Tito. Tito put together the Union of Yugoslavia to protect the Slavic people from the Soviet Union. It included what will become later on the countries of Bosnia-Herzegovina, Serbia, Croatia, Macedonia, Montenegro, Kosovo, and Slovenia. The only person who probably could have kept it together was Tito, because he was the only person that could speak all the languages.
And Tito was portrayed on a lot of stamps in Yugoslavia, probably more than any other leader in any other country. Just there's a very large number of stamps in the 50s, 60s, 70s that bore Tito's face on them. And there's a few examples here. The one other sheet that's on the center up top is rather interesting, and it's a sheet of the International Philatelic Exhibition in 1956. And then to the right of that is a booklet. But this, if you were at the World Stamp Show in 2016 in New York, this was an international stamp show of that same magnitude. Tito was probably the only one that could have brought that to Yugoslavia.
Other combining of countries was the Czechoslovak. The people of Czechoslovakia were contained originally within the Austro-Hungarian Empire. A Czech, T.G. Masaryk, and a Slovak, M.R. Stefanik, created the Czechoslovak National Council while in exile. They persuaded the allies of World War I, Great Britain, France, and Russia, of the effectiveness of such a union. Two peoples, two cultures, two languages, one country.
There are a couple of interesting items on this slide. The souvenir sheet to the right is the 100th anniversary of the founding of Czechoslovakia, and it has a picture of Masaryk on the bottom. The postcard to the left is just a very interesting postcard with Masaryk, and it has the Tatra Mountains depicted on the left of the card.
The Soviet Union's control of Eastern Europe was always difficult to maintain. Moscow attempted to strengthen its hold over the remaining Eastern European countries in 1955 by creating a joint military. During the next 3 decades, there were revolts in Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and Poland. Soviet troops were sometimes used to crush those rebellions. The next 3 stamps will show you the resiliency of some of the average person and people during this time. The 56 revolutionary stamp stamp celebrating the revolution in Hungary depicts the common people.
Yeah, these, if you look at the upper right, you see the people, and to the left of that is the banner for Radio Free Hungary. These were common people that were freedom fighters. The saying on the right, lower right, is
sorry. Hang on.
Where there are heroes, don't forget there will always be more. And there's
another
some more.
1956 celebration of heroes is the Roma heroes. The Roma people weren't always well treated in history. And this is unique in the fact that they were celebrated along with the other folks within the Hungarian Revolution.
These are, this is also the 60th anniversary. This was in 2016 of the Hungarian Revolution. And the people depicted on this souvenir sheet are common people who are standing up for their rights. There's a nurse, a pianist, a student, an educator, electrician, and they're all freedom fighters.
The last hero stamp of the 56th revolution is the Hungarian Olympic heroes. While some would call it the failed revolution in the streets, the 56th revolution was being fought on the streets of Budapest. In Melbourne, Australia, the Hungarian Olympic teams were competing, none more fiercely than the water polo team that's depicted here in the lower left part of that stamp. There's a famous match called the Blood in the Water match, where the Hungarians beat the Soviets 4-0 in water polo that day and went on to win the gold medal. Truly amazing.
Yes, that's definitely amazing. And the stamp in the middle of the souvenir sheet, there were other victors in that Olympics. This fella here, his name is Laszlo Papp, and he is a heavyweight boxer. And he won the gold medal in boxing in 1956. Now, he didn't defeat a Russian, but it was still a very significant accomplishment.
Other heroes during the same time frame in the Czechoslovak arena, there is a photojournalist, Ladislav Bialek, with this iconic photo of man staring down tank in the streets. At times, the Soviets brought in tanks against the citizens in the street that were speaking out. And this was captured in a photograph.
Yep, there's not much more I can say about that, but other than the fact that it's the 50th anniversary of the 1968 rising within Slovakia. Again, common people rising up against tanks.
Another hero, a little bit of celebration, is Michael Strank. We in the US may be more familiar with the profile of Michael Strank's face because he was the sergeant that led the Marines up the hill on Mount Kirabuchi on Iwo Jima. And there's the image of him planting the US flag on Iwo Jima. He was Slovakian. He was also a US Marine, but he was Slovakian, and he celebrated here on this Slovakian stamp.
Yep. And he was killed in action in 1945, as you can see from the lower right of the, well, you can see his date of passing, but he's buried in Arlington National Cemetery.
Oh, now what you've been waiting for is to find out exactly again who was in the former Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia broke apart around the same time as the Soviet Union in 1991. So here we go. We have, yes, it's one country, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Croatia, Montenegro, Slovenia, Serbia, Kosovo, and Macedonia. Now, if you're sitting there counting why are there more stamps than there's countries on this slide, Alan's going to tell you about the postal authorities in one of the countries.
Yes, and Jennifer, I could see you nodding your head. That stamp on the lower left is for you. If we go to the right, we'll see a very dressed up cat from Macedonia. Very, very pretty cat. And to the right of that, we have an autism stamp that's from Croatia. We're just trying to show the different countries here. Now, the three Bosnias, if you look at there are three stamps in the upper left.
Right.
Yeah, right, sorry, right. Dyslexia again, but anyway. The stamp with Tesla on it is a Bosnian Serb stamp. The stamp to the right of that is a Bosnian Muslim stamp, and I'll explain what that is in a minute. And the stamp just below that is a Bosnian Croat stamp. So Bosnia is one country, one government, but it has three administrative and ethnic subdivisions. Those three are, as we just saw, Serb, Muslim, and Croat. One country, three ethnic areas.
Okay, if we haven't lost anybody in Yugoslavia, then we're going to move on to the Balkan Peninsula. So tighten that seatbelt. Okay. Now, the Balkan countries, and we really have a difficult time saying who's a Balkan country. There are references that differ in opinions. Some say there's 10 countries in the Balkans, some say there's up to 12. So let's go back and do this a little bit more orderly. If we all can agree on who's on the Balkan Peninsula, that'll be a little easier. So let's go back to a definition of a peninsula that we had when we were all in grade school. And it'd be the landmass surrounded on three sides by bodies of water. So we have the Adriatic on the west, and the Aegean on the south, and the Black Sea on the east. With that, then we can look at Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Montenegro, Serbia, Kosovo, Macedonia. We're okay with that. Bulgaria, we're okay with that. Romania might be kind of a stretch, but there is a piece of it sitting on the Black Sea, so we'll take Romania. Now, let's say Greece. Well, there are the Greek Isles, but the bulk of the land mass is sitting on the peninsula. So for the sake of discussion, we'll leave them in here too. And then there's Turkey. There's the European part of Turkey with the Bosphorus Strait. So that's sitting on the peninsula, but then there's the rest of it sitting on the Anatole over here. But you know what? We really like the Turkey stamp, so we'll leave them in here too. So for this part, we'll say there's 12 countries here. So Alan's going to tell you about some of the stamps.
Yeah, in the upper left, we have a stamp from Serbia, and that's Bosnia Serb. but that's the cosmonaut, Yuri Gagarin. And space cosmonauts are a very popular topic in all of the Eastern European countries. If you look to the right of that, we see another bridge diver from Kosovo. And then on the left, we have the Albanian stamps. We have Albanian stamps for, sorry, on the right.
Okay.
Right.
Can I introduce the Albanian story?
Oh, sure.
I forgot about the Albanians.
Yes.
Okay. Remember we said that Albania was always staying the same, and they really are in terms of their border. But Albania is a little bit the odd couple relationship here. Some consider it a modern day phenomena. Albania has this informal relationship with China. Two states of vastly differing size, thousands of miles apart, almost no cultural ties or knowledge of each other, but their one common interest is their hostility to the Soviet Union. So that leads us to what Alan's going to tell you about on this stamp.
Right, and that's a stamp that commemorated the 50th anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party. That's Mao Zedong on the right, and some communist gatherings, meetings, scenes on the left. And interestingly enough, above that, we have another Albanian block of 4, which has U.S. leaders on there, and a picture of Mount Rushmore. And I think we talked about most of the stamp. Yeah, the Montenegro stamp over there is a children's stamp, and that's part of children's stories, and that's part of the Europa series, which we'll talk about next. Yes.
Europa. Europa postage stamps are annual joint issues of stamps with common designs or themes by postal administrations of countries of the European communities. They underline the cooperation and promote philately.
Now, this is probably not the best slide to be putting up now because I assume many of you have not had dinner yet, but it is still a real interesting slide with lots of good food from Eastern Europe. My favorite is the one on the upper left. That's from Bosnia, and that's Travnik cheese. So if you look at, I'm not going to go through each of these stamps, but there's a lot of different, ethnic foods. And if you go to the right, all the way over to the right, you'll find more cheese. So this stamp, yes, that one's cheese and wine, and that's from Moldova. But this is all part of the Europa series of 2005.
And the Czech ones.
Oh, the Czech one is interesting too. It's a stein of beer and some sort of chicken, I think.
These are my favorite.
Oh, this is the postal routes. Yes. In 2020, which is this previous year, the Europa series was ancient postal routes. Now, the one that I think is really impressive is the one from Poland. It goes from inside Poland and it goes up. The routes go up through all the way up to the Baltic Sea, and that's Port Gdansk is right up there.
Fighting postman.
Yep. And you can take a look at these other ones. They're rather interesting from different postal routes.
The changing maps, the 20th century, near the end of the 20th century, we had ethnic groups that exerted their right to self-rule. Czechoslovakia and Yugoslavia ceased to exist, giving birth to Slovakia and the Czech Republic, and all the countries in Yugoslavia we had already mentioned to you, and the nations of the Balkan Peninsula. Serbia, Montenegro, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia are all reborn. The European Union had been 28, 27 members now with Brexit that waged war with each other, mostly find common ground in the EU. Open borders, open trade, and travel lead to economic growth for the region.
We have some stamps here depicting the entrance into the EU for most of these countries. If you look at the Hungarian stamp, It's actually
Sideways, sorry
supposed to be
about that.
horizontal, but if we ran out of room on that slide, but if you look at the clock, it says 11:48. And that is the time of entry of Hungary into the European Union. Stamp above the sheet, actually above that, is from Croatia. And if you go to the lower right, find a very interesting stamp from Serbia, which highlights the road to the EU.
Stamps can be the threads that tie together the shifting borders of Eastern Europe with many cultures, ethnic groups, religions, and countries. Countries may come and go in their existence, and their borders may ebb and flow, but to the philatelist, the stamps and cultures of this region will endure over time.
These are all folk costumes from the various countries. You have Slovakia, Croatia, Estonia, Moldova, Slovenia. So you see some very interesting folk costumes, and that will bring our presentation to an end.
Thank you, and we hoped you enjoyed the journey today, and we hope you have some questions for us and comments.